Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome back to Houselights, our director discussion show here on the Nerd Party Network. This week, we're continuing in the house of Kurosawa with his 1958 film, The Hidden Fortress. Noted for sharing the story through the eyes of two greedy peasants, R2-D2 and C3, Tahei and Matsuishi. A story. It has everything. We have generals, princesses, dirt maps, border crossing, gold branches, and of course, a hidden fortress. I'm your host this evening, simple peasant Darren Moser, and I'm joined by the village reader of signs, Tristan Riddell, and general in hiding, John Mills. Will you take the path up the Rocky Mountain face or just use the secret tunnels? Let's find out in The Hidden Fortress. I see John is very happy with his role.
I'm glad I finally get the respect I deserve in these intros. Thank you very much.
I'm just the old man that walks around and talks to the illiterate.
Who wasn't he the old man from last week? I'm pretty sure it's the same actor.
I think so.
Probably.
It looked just like him. And I mean, it's Kurosawa, so I would see why he would reuse the same actor.
Yeah, and I don't think we ever really get like a close up of him at any point, do we? Like
no,
not like a good
you
look
get pretty close to him. Yeah, it in my mind it looked just like the old man in the mill from Seven Samurai.
Maybe. I think there was like a mid shot. I think that was as close as we got to him. So
that's all right.
Yeah, either way.
So yeah, this movie, some of us have not seen before. I mean, I've not seen any Kurosawa, so we'll start right there. But I think many a film major or a film buff has thought of The Hidden Fortress because it has been heavily revealed as not the full inspiration, but an inspiration to George Lucas and his making of Star Wars in 1977. And boy, God, that first scene as we were walking along the mountains with our two peasant friends, I almost heard astromech beeps during that scene. It was very inspired.
I swear I heard a Utini float around in there.
Fine, go that way. You'll be malfunctioning within a week. Like I expected those lines to come out of their mouths.
Yeah, I did see this the first time I saw it back in the 90s. I can tell you, I'm watching it on videotape because it was like, oh, well, George Lucas cited this.
Right.
And I remember, it opened up. We were like, oh, hey, look at that. I also remember the first time I watched this, like we got halfway through. We were like, what the hell, man? Why is this good? Like none of us liked it. It was one of those awful moments where it was like, oh, am I allowed to be a Star Wars fan still? Because I got to tell you, I didn't really like this. I revisited it years later. My opinion changed a bit, but I think that the DNA is definitely there with the original Star Wars. But I would argue, and this was the conclusion I hit at the last rewatch I had years ago. I think there's even more Phantom Menace about this than there is A New Hope. Yes, this opens up with the two, peasants, droids going, and then the battle's going on around them, and they get caught up in everything, and they find the general. But like, there is a lot of this that also transfers over into the Phantom Menace. I would argue even the type of humor and characterizations that it has. I think there's more of a direct line between the two of them, and I think I think that it's super interesting because this is. I mean, I'll throw it out there. I think this is harder to get into than Seven Samurai or Rashomon. I think this is a more difficult one to sort of like vibe on. Like, I think it takes a little bit of time to get into it.
Which is really funny.
Tristan?
Well, I just want to comment on what John said because that's the exact opposite of what Kurosawa intended. Because Rashomon and Seven Samurai weren't big hits financially, and he was really chagrined with it. And so he's like, you know what? I'm going to make a really, truly accessible movie that's just thrill rides and it's funny. And so I find that fascinating.
Oh, no, I think once it gets going, it gets going. And I think it is like when they're on the path, when you have the stairs scene on the fortress. I just think that it. And the thing is, you could even make the argument that you look at some of Lucas's work, you look at the original Star Wars, like you show that to a kid nowadays, it's sort of like once it gets going, the kid really gets into it. But like that first reel is sort of like can be a little bit slow for them. And I don't think it's so much pace that I react to. It's that I think that it's one of those things where I'll make the argument that I'd say for the first little bit of the movie, yeah, it's cute. There's humor, there's action, but you're like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, what I'm waiting for something to come together is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think definitely you asked that question of what are we doing here? What's the movie?
Right.
And in my view, that's kind of around that framing device of the peasants. Like it works, but there's also the caveat of they're not the main characters as far as everything is happening to them. They have very little they have a little bit of agency and a little bit of, direction on what they're choosing and the greed and things like that and sticking together. But again, your lead characters, in air quotes, the general and the princess and others show up way into the movie.
Yep.
Not in the beginning at all. So I totally get what you're saying, John, where that first act, you're kind of just in the world and like, okay, is this just bumbling peasant movie? And it's not, but you wouldn't know that if you'd only watched the first act, because that's just how it comes across.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, did you guys feel the same way? I mean, this is your first viewing. Or am I being too harsh on it?
I don't think so. For me, it was hard because, again, I'm viewing it through that Lucas lens where I'm looking for the connections. So even more so, the first act of the peasant / droids, very obvious, very blatant. But then I'm like, oh, there's a princess. Like they foreshadow it. Like, oh, there's a sign saying we're looking for the princess. I'm like, general and princess. Is that going to be like Obi-Wan and Leia? And it's like, not really. But
that's close.
It's kind of close. Again,
close-ish.
I'd say, obviously, this movie, as far as its connection with Star Wars, it's the framing device. It's the broad strokes. It is not like, I'm going to remake Hidden Fortress and it's going to be in space. Like, that is not Star Wars. That's not how it comes across.
I got a question, though. Did you guys notice in that opening scene, right, where we're hanging with the peasants, they're talking... In that opening scene, though, when the warrior runs into frame and he's being chased down and he gets killed and the horses turn around. Did you catch that a horse almost stepped on his head? Did you see that? Did you notice?
I think
he's
I did.
Laying on the ground, and I swear that horse hoof couldn't have come any closer to the guy's head. And he turns, and they hold that through the cut. To later in the scene.
That's true, because
he's on the side.
He freezes with his arm up, which is a weird way to die.
Well, but the thing is, he's laying there, and the horse hoof, I swear, if it didn't hit him, it was the closest it could have possibly come. And he turns up at that moment, but then they hold it through the rest of the scene for continuity, I guess. But it's really, I mean, you want to talk about hazard pay? That guy deserved, extra couple of bucks, I hope.
Well, what do you think, Tristan, as far as what did you know about Hidden Fortress? Was it something on your bucket list, or
I knew absolutely nothing?
Zip.
Zero. Nothing. Right. I didn't know who was in it. I didn't know what the story was. Zero. Nothing. Didn't even see a poster.
Although the poster, again, they all feature, at least the ones I'm all seeing, feature, Toshiro. Like, he is the headliner guy, because even the Seven Samurai, I wouldn't call him the lead samurai, but he's in some of the posters, he is the main draw.
I feel like there was like maybe 15, 20 years ago, there was a re-release of all these movies, and they had this unified, like, they all look like paintings. And I think they all had Mifune.
Many characters everywhere.
Yeah. It's, I mean, in terms of the in terms of like redoing everything, I mean, he's, by this point, even casual film fans know the name because of all of the reference that's been made to him. This is another one where I watch it and I'm fascinated by the idea that Toshiro Mifune could have been in the original Star Wars. I'm like, that would have been so interesting. Lucas originally wanted to cast him. And
was he going to be Obi-Wan? Was that
it was never at the talk stage, but it was sort of like at the conceptual stage he wanted, and Obi-Wan's very much modeled after, he was originally written with Mifune in mind. And I'm like, that would have been such a fascinating movie to watch. But, my question is, like, since we do focus on these peasants and it is, humorous so far as the film goes, did the humor play for you guys? Like, did it translate for you, or was it more of like this was funny for Japanese audiences at the time, but man, why would anybody laugh at this?
Yeah, I kind of lean that way a little bit, where it's just like, this was funny for the 50s. Be like, like it's lighthearted and there's certain things that made me chuckle, but I never like laughed out loud. Like there was no knee slappers in here, but there was a sense of levity to it that you could tell it didn't take itself too seriously. I think the only time I was really grinning was at the very end when they were when Teihei and Matasuichi they were sitting in the dirt, and they're like, I thought I was going to be so happy when I found that rod of gold, and then there's like, you know what? Let's stay friends. It's just, I was just grinning, and then when they got back in prison, they're like, let's stay friends in heaven.
Yeah. I mean, they are definitely the humor. I think their humor works where, they're just, I love the fact that, again, I see 3PO and R2 every shot, because one is shorter, one is taller, like their mannerisms, like it's very imprinted. But yeah, like you said, Tristan, the little, jabs, and they're just suffering through life. They're suffering through this movie together.
Right.
And having a terrible time. I think for me, the humor, or maybe it was humor, I don't know, with the princess was the weirdest character to me. Like, I did not get the whole, we raised her as a boy so that she's strong, but she's also kind of mean and talks like, I didn't get her character at all. Like every other character I had a beat on, I did not on hers.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that it has to be some sort of a cultural thing. But there's the old thing was like translator equals traitor. Like the whole idea that like we're watching these subtitles, there is definitely context that we're missing, and especially not growing up in Japanese culture, especially of the time. There's got to be stuff that we're not getting in the word choice and stuff like that.
And on top of that, I didn't in Seven Samurai, I listened in Japanese and read the English subtitles, but I just wanted to see. And so I put on the English audio and I left the English subtitles on. They did not match in the least.
Oh, so the dub and the subtitles didn't match.
They were completely different.
Wow.
And I didn't test it with Hidden Fortress, but I did notice that there was a lot of modern interpretation in the subtitles of Hidden Fortress. Did you guys notice that?
There was a lot of stuff where I didn't notice it as quote unquote modern interpretation, but I noticed is that that it's like the phrasing never feels quite like it's hitting the emotional beat. I'm like, that doesn't feel like the word you would use there if you were feeling that way, sort of thing. There had to be some sort of, slang or substitution word that you would have used.
And it also feels anachronistic, with certain beats. And it was just, I was like, who translated this? Like, is this a new translation? Like we're dealing with Japanese here. We're not dealing with, Aramaic.
Well, insert joke about AI redoing the translations for the next edition or something like that. But like, just to speak to that point, Tristan, like, I do think there's also an effort to shorten things for the sake of reading and keeping up, because kids nowadays, they love the subtitles, even if they know the language that's being spoken. Drives me insane. But I've been in a situation where I've been forced to watch it like that. and they're speaking the words and the subtitles don't match. And it's like, it's English closed captioning on people speaking English and the words are different. And I'm like, this doesn't even make sense. Why would these words be different? But it's to truncate it so that you can read it. So, I think that definitely
otherwise it
too.
would display so quickly that you wouldn't
Right.
be able to read it. Well, let's talk about Toshiro again, our common thread in these movies so far. The man has screen presence. I mean, just walking into the scene, coming out of the forest or the mountains, and you're just like, oh, here we go. Like, that's really the beginning of the second act, I'd say, is when he shows up, the general in hiding, and now you're like, okay, what's going on? I almost forgot the movie was called Hidden Fortress, honestly, though, until they got there and they're like, oh, look, it's a Hidden Fortress. I'm like, that's right. The whole name of the movie. I totally forgot that was going to be a thing. But what did you guys think of his portrayal as compared to the other two we've seen?
Well, I was excited because it was so different from the previous two that we've seen, because I felt like I genuinely thought that in Seven Samurai, I was like, is he the same guy as in Rashomon? Like, did the guy from Rashomon escape?
He laughs
and then
all
steal
the
a
time.
samurai sword. He was also the itchiest actor in Japan I've ever seen in those first two movies. He was
that is true.
Scratching himself. And in this one, it was nice because he was a completely different character and different mannerisms and tone and everything like that, but still kept his presence. And that spear fight with him was badass.
Yes. I think that
too long, but badass.
I think that this is the point where he's definitely got a screen presence in the first two that we've watched. He's definitely a draw. You can tell he's a real talent. He has charisma that comes across on screen. But in this one, I think this is the one that I would point to where he really starts to inhabit this sort of like almost gravitational effect on the movie. You notice him when he's not there. When he's there, everything sort of revolves around him. And then when he's not in the scene, it does start to get there's almost like a disambiguity that starts happening about it, where it's like stuff starts to get a little looser and drift a little bit, and you're waiting for him to come back.
Then he steps back on screen, and it's zip. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've talked a bit. It's been a while since we've talked about protagonist confusion in movies, and I'm not saying that it goes that far in this one, but I mean, is the general the lead character? I don't think it's the princess, but it's hard to get off the peasants because they're in the whole dang thing from their point of view. Like, I don't, it's almost a coin toss really in my mind on who the protagonist is. And maybe it doesn't need to be that, defined, but I'd say just for his agency, the general is the guy with the plan who's, once he's in the story, is driving it forward, makes the decisions. And even though the framing device is still there with the peasants, I have a hard time pinning them with the protagonist label.
I think the issue is that what if Star Wars didn't have Luke Skywalker?
Yes.
Who would be the protagonist then? Is it 3PO? Is it R2-D2? Is it Han Solo? Is it Princess Leia? Is it Obi-Wan? It's none of them. It's all of them. But you have Luke Skywalker, and so you're like, oh, he's the protagonist. It's about him. In Hidden Fortress,
so kind of
you have all those characters except for Skywalker.
Character like that. Yeah.
Well, and I think that gets to that more core aspect. I agree with you, Tristan, and I think that what makes Luke the central character is he starts at a place and he goes and he ends at a place, and it's a different place than he started at. So there's an actual arc going on. These characters are not so much interested in any sort of development as accomplishment. And so the peasants are in the same place they were when they started. The general is just all about getting the princess to where she is, and the princess is all about being a princess. And it's like there's no sense of they have changed substantially by the time they get to the end. And I think that speaks to your point, Darren, where it's like, whose story is this? And I would say that we've all just sort of answered it, where it's like, it's not really anybody's story. It's a story that these characters are in, but it's not their story per se. Like they're not the sole driver of something for me to watch. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I think that all depends greatly on what another general said was your own point of view. And I think that, that's possibly one of the things that, basically, I'm glad you brought it up, Darren, because I think you just crystallized it for me as to why I find this one harder to access than Seven Samurai or Rashomon. I'm always searching in this movie for who is my North Star. And I think that's also why I gravitate toward Mifune, is because when he's on screen, I care about what that guy's doing. I'm interested in what he's doing, and I want to follow him through the rest of his story. And that's why I miss him when he's not on screen after they introduce him.
Well, and that's a good point. Also compared to Seven Samurai, which is also a very ensemble piece. You could, but I don't have the same feeling of, I have no idea whose story this is. It's like, no, it's a different kind of story, but in a way though, I feel the lack of Luke Skywalker-ness, which I know that's what we're going to call it now. It almost makes it feel more like history to me. Like this is just a day in history and someone wrote it down and we told this story, like, because sometimes there are days like that where there's no hero. It's just the day the princess tried to get back to her kingdom and the peasants were there. Like this movie also seems to take place over like 3 days. It seems very quick. I know it's a little longer than that, but like pacing wise, it feels like a weekend at Tachi's,
I think it gets muddy specifically because, and this is the only way I can really think to phrase it, is there's not enough lighting variance. Like I don't have an assortment of like, here's a day scene, here's a night scene, here's a day scene, here's a night scene, so that I get a sense of the progression of time. So to your point, is it 3 days?
You're right.
Is it 3 weeks? Is it a month? Like how long is it? It's however long you want it to be. And the thing is, that can be a good thing. I would argue, because we're always talking about the Star Wars influence. I think that's one of the great things about Star Wars is like, how long did this adventure take? Well, however long your brain wanted it to. But I don't think that this works as well, specifically because I think that it works in something like Star Wars because everything is told in such a compressed fashion. It's so fast, faster, more intense. Whereas this, while, Tristan, I know you called out the pacing being an issue for you in Seven Samurai, I would say ever since the first time I watched it, the pacing in Hidden Fortress is an issue for me, because there are moments where it's like, and we're still walking and we could have cut, and just take the scene where the peasants are going across the river, like testing the depth with the sticks. And then they see the guys on the bank and they slowly turn, and the guy on the bank is slowly reacting to them, and they slowly start ambling away. And then a second guy shows up, and then I'm like, this really should have been a lot shorter. This could have been told so much more quickly. And there are transition scenes that could have gone more quickly.
This crossing could have been an email. Okay.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, I think that contributes to it. Is like, I don't have a clear definition of day and night, like how many days and nights, or a sense of many of them. And the scenes themselves take a long time. So it's like you could get untethered in a sense.
For me, the offending scene was the climb up the rocky slope. Took forever. Like, when are we going to get to the top? It took so long that there wasn't a joke anymore. Like, I get that this is, look, they're struggling, and they get to the top, and then they like, we could have gone that way. It's like, that was felt like a 20-minute climb. I know it was
a Shaggy Dog story. It was a Shaggy Dog story as a rock climb.
What about the pacing for you, Tristan? Anything jumped out, or just take at it with a razor and chop it down?
No, I think this was not Seven Samurai level of good Lord. I was, when I was watching this, I wasn't thinking like, I didn't want to pull my hair out. I wasn't screaming internally of how this could easily be an hour shorter. But I definitely think that this could be a half an hour shorter. Like this could be well under 2 hours.
It's
and
220.
Still achieve the same thing.
220.
It's 220. I think this could be 150. Easy. I really do. And I think that would make it much better, faster, more intense. Truly, because of just like all those things, like the things that you talked about, like when they were going up the rock face, or when they're wandering around, or like that spear duel, which even though it was amazing, it was way too long. It went on forever. Those guys would be exhausted. And it just, there was just so many points like that where you just, and also, I'm still not 100% sure why the character of the farmer's daughter was in the movie at all.
You mean woman purchased by the group who chose to accompany them? Because I think that's what she's listed on Wikipedia. Like, I didn't see the point of that character at all. It didn't make any sense. Except for maybe the shot composition's better when there's 3 people tied up. I don't know. I guess
it did. Okay, now that I say it out loud, because when you said shot composition, it did throw others off the trail because they didn't have their horses and there was an extra person there, because they made a point to say like, hey, if you find 3 men and a woman on horses, let us know. And they actually had 2 women and 3 men and no horses. So that's the only thing I can think of. And there was, like at the very end when they escape, when the general and the princess escape on horseback, like you see the generals, you see the farmer's daughter, and you're like, oh no, don't leave her. and the general like picks her up in this super badass move as he barely slows down.
That was a cool stunt when she like grabbed her as he rode by. Yeah.
What did you guys think about this being in Tohoscope?
Tohoscope, yes. Tohoscope. Isn't this his first, quote unquote widescreen film?
Yes, and it shows. Yeah.
I mean, I think he made the most of it for sure. I mean, like there's a lot. I completely
disagree.
You disagree?
Yeah,
really
hardcore.
Really hardcore disagrry.
This movie had no business being in scope.
Interesting.
I think if you had a different cinematographer, it probably would have worked better.
See, I do disagree with you on that, because I think there are some wonderful moments where it uses that sort of, more expansive, wider look to stage the characters at more extreme ends of the screen, to give more of a sense of scale of, the stairs in the mountain, or even the desolation that they're walking through in the beginning. I think there's some interesting camera work with it. So, I mean, we'll just have to agree to disagree. I'm disappointed that we do.
Well, no. Like Kurosawa's direction of how to use the camera and where to move it and how to follow the characters. I mean, that stays true, but there was more than a few points where it was, you were missing characters. Sometimes people would fall out of frame and then come back into frame. Cinematographer would center the people, and the plane wouldn't be level, and you wouldn't be quite sure if they were going for a Dutch angle or not. And it's just, when you watch Seven Samurai and you watch Rashomon, it's much closer to 4:3 aspect ratio, but it's a stellar use of the Z space, because you're forced to utilize it in a much more squarer aspect ratio. And so you really pack in the frame and you utilize those levels, especially within Seven Samurai, because you have so many characters that you have to work with. And in Hidden Fortress, you have a few shots where they're like, when they're going up to the river, and like they're hitting it with sticks, trying to see how deep it is, see if the horses can go through it. You naturally utilize the wide landscape there, but those shots were too few and far between, and there was much flatter and weird uses where, like, if this was in a 1.37:1, it probably would have been better. Better composed.
I'm going to disagree, because I think that the camera placement and the use of space, all of that stuff, is so clearly intentional that it later would have become known or regarded as a more quote unquote documentary approach to things, where and you could say, well, then why would you use, a CinemaScope thing for that? But I think that a lot of the camera placement, like for instance, I guess an argument could be made, from your perspective, where it's like when there are a couple of scenes where the peasants go and they're in the reeds or something like that, and you only see the tops of their heads, but you see like a lot of negative space up above them. You're talking about that sort of setup, right? I'm just making sure that I'm understanding like what aspect you're
there's
going
so
for.
many examples of it feeling haphazard. Like it did not feel intentional to me.
See,
there's so much
don't
wasted
agree.
space. There was so much wasted space and negative space. And the thing that kills me is that Kurosawa, being such a Ford fan, should know that landscape is about distance, and it's about the distance in between. And you just don't see it. You see clumps of things together, and then negative space on the left and on the right. It just yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I really strongly disagree, because I do see it as intentional. I also see, like, I'm calling to mind, a bunch of stuff. I think there's much more good that, obviously I'm sure that we could sit down and point to certain things. I'm like, yeah, great point there. But
let's get the time code out. Get the time codes out.
Yeah, no, but I think that there are a lot more instances of the space being used well, and a lot more depth to it than you're giving it credit for.
I mean, when I think of a wide shot like that, the one that comes to mind is towards the very end when the three horses are riding, and you're like way far back, and there's like one little horse in the middle that's kind of setting the pace, and then you have one that's lagging behind, and then one that's like way ahead, and then we're on it for like 15 minutes. But it'll be interesting to see as we progress through more Kurosawa, as he is more used to other aspect ratios. And I mean, we've seen many directors, I would say, who transitioned from that square ratio into CinemaScope or things like that, or went from television directors to film, or vice versa. There's good ways to use the space and bad ways. But I'm just going to be all diplomatic for you guys. But no, let's make sure we talk a little bit about the music, because often that sometimes gets overlooked here on Houselights. I think it added to the comedy. There was a nice little punchiness, with the peasants, and every time a group of, I guess, soldiers with their flags, strapped to their backs rode in, there was always a crescendo and things were coming. So it added a lot to I took it as cues of how I'm supposed to feel about this moment, which I think is good when music does that. It's like, oh, this is a lighthearted moment, or, oh, we're all now in a muddy pit digging gold. This is bad. But how did the music strike both of you? Was it, I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say memorable, but I think it complemented everything.
I think it had much more of a character than the previous two that we watched. I felt that there were certain moments where it carried the emotion of the scene, which might remind you of another director's works who was heavily influenced by The Hidden Fortress. But I think that more than the other two that we watched, this score is there. It feels like it has more purpose than the other ones. The other music feels a lot like, well, movies have music and this is appropriate music for this. This feels more like, let's get the audience in the moment here and let's get them really feeling what's going on. So yeah, that's where I would land with that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, John. I think this is this music feels it helps convey the emotion, Darren, kind of like what you were saying. Like it's really there to kind of accent the points. And I find it interesting that we both feel that way when the composer had 1 week to write the music. And
I didn't realize that.
That's insane that he was able to accomplish that and do it so well, because it's this music is memorable. This music, like when I think about Tehei and the other guy, Machichichi, I think about the music. I think about those moments, like when they're walking through the desert, or when they're like fighting each other, or they're like yelling at each other and insulting each other. Like that music comes to mind.
Yeah. I mean, I think that with the music, I think that's a beautiful thing. But what I really want to make sure we talk about, is that this performed poorly in the U.S. This winds up almost basically reversing what the other two that we talked about. Whereas like Rashomon and Seven Samurai, they found their international audience, and the U.S. audiences were very receptive to it, and it all worked very well. And then the U.S. audiences were like, not for me. But I as part of that, it was originally released with a 126-minute runtime, right, which is slightly shorter. But Tristan, I put to you, would the reissue in 1962 with the 90-minute runtime, would you be interested in seeing that version of the film?
I would. I would watch this again to see a different cut. Absolutely.
And that's where the Criterion Collection lets us down, is they should release those alternate cuts of all of these movies so that we get a sense for, maybe this did work better for somebody than that. And I'd love to know which cut certain people saw that influenced them back in that time. Which cut of this did they see? Because that could have also shaped their perception of the film really heavily. So
everyone should go full Oliver Stone and do 4 cuts of the same movie.
But then you have to make sure to later publicly retract and apologize for at least one of those cuts for the full Oliver Stone experience, and not be Ridley Scott and just insist all 5 of them are perfect. So, there you go.
Well, while it didn't do extremely well in the States, it did do fairly well in Japan. I mean, I don't know the conversion rates, but for $195 million yen budget and making 342 million, that's nothing to sneeze at. And I believe it was his most successful until we eventually got Yojimbo, which, topped it. So it's so interesting, especially as we're going through these houses, looking at not only this path of a director through his career, but how, we've all talked about, this is the blank check movie because he made so much money before, and look, he had a string of 3 that made money and then it did poorly. And so the next one had less of it, but like, it's just such an interesting course when everything's in hindsight. I mean, nowadays we're looking at directors and going, what's their next going to be? And we didn't know that that's really going to be influenced by what the lead actor from that other movie was in 2 years ago. Like, it's, we're in the real time. But I think for me, watching this, even though it was only kind of almost just fan service of, I've heard a Star Wars connection, I want to experience that and see what it is. I did enjoy the story. I think I'm going to roll around third base, cross the river with my sticks, and give my rating, as I think we've said most everything we can about this movie, and we don't want to go to 126 minutes. Let's just not. But I think I do really enjoy the peasants. I think the humor worked for them. I think, like you said, John, Mifune's just every shot he's in, he with his powerful calf muscles, because dear Lord, that man could like just roundhouse kick anybody into the ground. But yeah, I just kind of wished there was more of a hero to tell us where we're going with the story. And it worked without it, but you can definitely see where Lucas took inspiration, but wasn't like, I need to make a shot for shot Hidden Fortress movie. Like, that doesn't make sense. That's not the movie you want to reinvent for your space fantasy amazing picture. So I'm going to give Hidden Fortress a 3. I think it was a decent movie. I would, if I could find the 90-minute, I agree with Tristan. I think I would watch it to see how it changed the pace, and if it was a little more digestible, like, I could revisit the 90-minute whenever. I was joking with Tristan earlier about when watching subtitle films, it's a little different experience because you can't just put it on the background. Like, it's like, nope, this is what I'm watching, full screen, reading the subtitles for 126 minutes straight. Like, that is what is required. But it's worth it for you, dear listeners of Houselights. So yes, 3 stars for me. John, the hidden podcaster. What do you give on this reviewing, and did it kind of change, like you said, from your initial when you watched it all those years ago?
Well, it definitely changed from that. I wind up landing, and Tristan is going to be mad at me for this one. I wind up giving it a 4. And the reason I give it a 4 is while there are issues and while there are pacing things that I think can be resolved, I think they're all basically in the first half of the film. And once it starts going, maybe I have the memory of a goldfish or whatever, but like it's one of those things where it's like once it gets going, I'm willing to forgive that. I'm like, okay, well, we got there. The trip to where I wanted to go took longer than I would have liked, but I got there. And unlike Tristan, I think it is well shot, and I do think that it looks cool. I think there's a lot of stuff in it that I think is really interesting, the way that they stage it and the way that they put things together. And so I wind up with a 4. I think the score works really well for the first time of the 3 that we've watched. And so, yeah, that's where I'm landing with a 4. So it's a 3 from Darren, a 4 from me, and Tristan, drum roll.
I'm giving this a 3 as well.
There you go.
I think this is a fun movie. I'm glad I saw it. I think the music is interesting. I think the characterizations are pretty great. I think there's a lot of things that aren't needed, mainly, entire characters. I feel like so many scenes can be cut down and don't need to be there. And unlike John, I have an eye for cinematography, and so I can tell when things are a little off.
That's fair. That's fair.
Like John's opinions, and it's just, I think with that, it brings it down to a 3. But it's a solid 3. Like this is not like a 3 is a bad number. It's not like this is a trash movie. It's just, I think there's a lot wrong with it, but there's a lot of good things too. It's just nowhere near to the level of Rashomon or what Seven Samurai could have been if it was much shorter.
So we've gone through the glade of Rashomon, met the Seven Samurai, and found the hidden fortress. Next week is 1961's Yojimbo, here on Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.